Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into a really powerful idea, empathy as, get this, an essential survival skill. We're going to look at how a period of just intense global adversity taught us some critical lessons about how to lead and, honestly, how to live a whole lot more effectively. Okay, so let's rewind the clock to the beginning of 2020. It was a moment of just deep, widespread psychological distress, right? A time that was about to test every single one of us in ways we couldn't even begin to imagine. So the thing is, this stress wasn't from just one source. It was this perfect storm, what the author calls a triple whammy. Think about it. You had this invisible virus, your daily life was completely thrown out the window, and the future? Total question mark. And that combination, well, it plunged pretty much everyone into this state of chronic high stress. It got so surreal that to cope, people were making things like apocalypse bingo just to try and process the sheer absurdity of it all. But behind all that dark humor were some staggering real-world consequences. We're talking up to 1.6 billion workers around the globe who were facing either losing their jobs outright or, at the very least, just profound economic uncertainty. And some entire industries were, well, they were just decimated. Think about retail, travel, aviation, and especially hospitality. In the US alone, the hotel sector at one point lost half of all its jobs. Just poof. That's a staggering collapse. And beyond those big economic numbers, there was a really deep human cost. This crisis, it didn't hit everyone the same way. What it did was magnify the vulnerabilities that were already there. So marginalized communities, they had fewer safety nets. Working mothers, they took on this immense double burden of work and caregiving. And the strain on families was just intense. You see it in the numbers, like US divorce rates jumping by 34%. To really bring this home, there are some incredibly powerful personal stories out there. One woman, Valentina, talks about how the pressures from the pandemic piled on top of prejudice she already faced at work, creating what she called a double persecution. It's just a stark reminder of the very real personal toll this took on people. So here's the crucial point. This wasn't just some brief, stressful event that came and went. Nope. This was a prolonged, worldwide state of chronic stress. So with that as the backdrop, let's take a look at what that kind of intense, nonstop pressure actually does to our bodies biologically. Okay, so our bodies basically have two modes for dealing with pressure. You've got the sympathetic nervous system. That's your fight or flight response. It's what revs you up for action. Then you have the parasympathetic system, which is your rest and digest mode. It's what calms you back down. Now, here's the problem with chronic stress. That fight or flight switch gets stuck in the on position. It just never turns off, and our bodies never get a chance to recover. And where's that lead? Straight to burnout. And this explains so perfectly why so many of us felt completely stuck. Think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It tells us you have to feel safe and secure, those basic needs, before you can even think about stuff like personal growth or achievement. Well, this crisis just knocked millions of people right down to the bottom of that pyramid. When you're worried about your health, your family, your job, it's pretty much impossible to focus on anything else, right? But okay, here is the good news. We are not powerless in this. We can actually fight back against all that stress by boosting our body's own happy chemicals. There's a really handy acronym for them. DOSE. That stands for dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. These are the neurochemicals that we can actually trigger with our own actions to make ourselves feel better. So, what is the antidote to all this stress, all this disconnection? The answer that's put forward is something that every single one of us has the capacity for, and that is empathy. And importantly, it's not presented as some soft, fuzzy feeling. No, it's framed as a critical tool for survival and for rebuilding. So what exactly is empathy? Well, it's the ability to genuinely understand what another person is feeling by trying to see the world from their point of view. But listen, the most important part of this whole definition is right here. It is a skill that can be developed. It is not something you either have or you don't. Think of it like a muscle. You can actually work on it and make it stronger. And this is where we have to make a really critical distinction. We often use the words empathy and sympathy like they're the same thing, but they are fundamentally different. Sympathy is feeling for someone. It's pity, it's sorrow, but from a distance. Empathy, on the other hand, is feeling with them. It's all about closing that distance and creating a genuine human connection. And the ultimate goal here, the most powerful form, is what's called compassionate empathy. Now, this is where you don't just understand how someone feels, you're actually moved to do something about it. This is empathy in action. It's the bridge that takes you from just feeling to actually helping. Okay, so if empathy is this powerful, why isn't it everywhere? Well, it turns out our own biases can be a huge barrier. The source material gives this great example of a recruiter whose unconscious bias completely blocked them from connecting with a candidate, and it led to a really bad hiring decision. It's just a perfect example of how our own internal filters can literally shut empathy down. So, how do you get better at it? How do you actually strengthen that empathy muscle? Well, it starts with some really simple practical actions. First, practice active listening, and I mean really listening. Listening to understand, not just waiting for your turn to talk. Second, be genuinely curious. Ask those open-ended questions. And finally, go out of your way to seek out perspectives that are different from your own. And here's a pretty wild example of what happens when empathy is just completely absent from an organization. Get this, a company wrote a memo that blamed an employee for slipping on a wet floor when management knew the roof was leaking. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's a textbook case of a toxic culture where blame completely replaces responsibility. Now, the complete opposite of that toxic mess is a culture of psychological safety. And this is the absolute bedrock of any high-performing team. It's that shared belief that it's okay to speak up. It's safe to be vulnerable, to ask questions, to admit you screwed up, or to pitch a crazy idea without any fear of being shamed or punished for it. And leaders can take these ideas and apply them directly to the modern workplace, especially now with so many remote and hybrid teams. The key is to look at these 4 areas and reinvent them through an empathetic lens. So you focus on outcomes, not just being busy. You get way more intentional with communication. You actually enable people with the right tools and support, and you actively, consciously build that psychological safety, even when you're not in the same room. So what's the big takeaway here? It's this. Empathy isn't just some nice-to-have leadership trait. It's not a soft skill. It is the absolute foundation. You could even say it's the prerequisite for emotional intelligence. And that, in turn, is what you need for clear communication and truly effective leadership in the world we live in today. And this final idea really just sums the whole thing up beautifully. The goal here isn't just to use empathy to put out fires or reduce pain in the moment. It's about using it proactively, using it to completely transform our interactions and to build lasting happiness and well-being, not just for other people, but for ourselves too. And this brings us to what might be the most empowering message of all. Leading with empathy has absolutely nothing to do with your job title or where you sit on an org chart. It's a choice, it's an action, it's something that any one of us can decide to start doing, right now, in any conversation, in any interaction, wherever we are. So we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. The pandemic, through all those countless video calls, gave us this literal window into each other's homes and lives, didn't it? We saw the kids, the pets, the messy backgrounds. We saw the reality of our shared humanity. So the question now is, what are you going to do with that insight? How will you take that perspective and intentionally use it to build connection, understanding, and happiness for the people around you every single day?